Hello everybody and welcome to another Rowing Chat. I'm Rebecca Caro and this is part of the Rowing Chat network, which is a compilation of podcasts all about the sport of rowing, hosted by many different wonderful people on a lot of different topics. Firstly, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Without them, this show would not be possible, and we do rely on you to click through and have a look at their products and services, and if you're able, share them with your friends, and if you're super able, to buy them. Our first sponsor is Faster Masters Rowing. They have published 2 new standalone training programs. These are designed to take you into a competition. There's one for long distance head races and one for 1,000-meter side-by-side racing. Each lasts 12 weeks and is designed to fit around your busy life. They have 3 core sessions a week, which everybody should do, and up to another 3 additional sessions, which you can do as your time and your schedule allow. They include detailed explanations for all the session intensities and the work pieces, so you know what each is going to help you improve. Weekday training is designed to be completed within 1 hour on the water or on the erg. You can buy your program at rowing.chat/sponsor and look for the 12-week training link. I'll put that link in the show notes. Our second sponsor is Pregal Rowing Camps. Are you a masters rower who needs a coaching boost? Many masters don't get competitive, regular coaching, and you can learn to row faster at the Pregal Rowing Camp. The camps offer coaching by experienced world-class coaches. Working in a small group, you're guaranteed personalized attention. There is individual video analysis, and they'll teach you how to understand rowing data and how to use it to help you row faster. The boats are supplied, and you'll be training on a quiet 3-kilometer long lake in Brno in the Czech Republic. That's not far from Prague and Vienna airports. The first camp's in July 2020, and you can combine this with racing at the Open Czech Masters Regatta. It's one of the largest regattas in Europe. The second camp is in August 2020, and it's an ideal preparation if you're going to the World Rowing Masters Regatta in Linz in Ottensheim, Austria. Last year's attendees loved Pregal. Here's what one of them said. "Thanks for an amazing camp, Sander, Romana and Adam. Really great recipe for an active vacation, great training opportunity, guaranteed rowing technique improvement, and great fun discovering a beautiful region of the Czech Republic." You can get more information at pregalrowing.com/rowingchat or go to the sponsors page. Now today I'm delighted to welcome to the show Margot Foster from Rowing Australia. Margot, welcome to Rowing Chat.
Thank you, Rebecca. Lovely to be with you.
Now, please tell the listeners a little bit about you and your personal background in the sport of rowing.
Well, I started rowing when I was at university, and I spent 5 years at university doing a law arts course, Melbourne University. And in third year, when I was living in a residential college, I was prevailed upon to go rowing. I had satisfactorily resisted for the previous 2 years, my first 2 years being in college and at uni. And then finally, I decided, well, I have to give in to this pressure and give it a go. So I did, and the rest is history, as they say.
And what did you do after your initiation into university rowing?
Well, I loved rowing from the moment I sat in a boat. I loved the teamwork. I loved the water. I've always been a water person. And I rowed for the university. I rowed for my college. I rowed for the university. And then finally I graduated to being selected to row for Victoria in regattas and for Melbourne Uni at regattas as well. So I had a lot of fantastic experiences. Having my first row at the National Championships in 1980. And I was very lucky in that year to be in the Melbourne Uni 8 with the members of the Australian crew who then went off to compete in Moscow.
Wow.
So that's great stuff.
Yeah. Now, The reason I invited Margot to join us today is that 2020 is a really special year for Rowing Australia. They're celebrating 100 years of women's rowing. What an achievement.
Oh, it's fantastic, Rebecca. To celebrate the establishment of the Australian Ladies Rowing Council in 1920, and the first time that women were allowed, invited, included in the regatta program to row in the Interstate Regatta with the men. So whilst women had been rowing for years before, doing their own thing, this was the first time they were more or less officially recognised as being suitable, eligible, whatever, to row on the same water at the same time as the blokes.
Now, interstate rowing is something that's unique to Australia. Can you just give us a bit of context, because most of us have never heard of it? What is an interstate regatta?
So in Australia, we have a number of states and 2 territories, and at the Interstate Regatta, it's when you don your state's colours and row for your state. And it's one day of the National Regatta. It's usually the Sunday when you row for your state. So the state of Victoria, the state of New South Wales, the state of Queensland, Tasmania, South Australia and Western Australia. And it is called the King's Cup and National Regatta, and the Interstate Regatta King's Cup is the trophy for which the men compete. And for many years, up until 1999, the women rowed in a Cox 4 and competed for the ULVA trophy. And in 1999, that swapped to a women's 8, and women now compete for the Queen's Cup.
Hold on one moment, because I found a lovely picture here of the Queen's Cup. And here is a lady who's called Dorothy Eakins. And there's a photograph of her there holding up the cup on the 50th anniversary of the first race. And she got congratulatory telegrams in 1920 because she was in the crew that won it. And it's a beautiful woman holding an oar on a triangular pyramidal base with lots of little silver shields around it.
Yes, it's the ULVA trophy. It stands for the donor, excuse me, of the trophy, which is the United Licensed Victuallers Association. And it was always commonly and popularly known as Bertha. So we all wrote Bertha.
What a great description. So have you personally won Bertha?
I have won Bertha on several occasions. I think probably about 5 or 6. I can't remember the races I won. I always have to rely on other people to remember for me. It's only a couple I remember, big ones.
Now, back in those days, it was a women's Coxed 4 race.
Yes.
And were all the interstate races 4s at those times? No,
the men's is an 8. There's a men's lightweight 4, a women's scull, and now you're testing me. I'm just trying to remember what the races are, but they're different classes of boats at the Interstate Regatta. So not every boat class is represented.
Certainly, when I started rowing at my university, there weren't enough women, so we all raced Coxed 4s, and it was many years later before they moved. Women's rowing popularity grew, and then they realised they couldn't fit all the boats on the river. So for the bumps, they had to switch them to 8s.
To 8s, yes. Well, certainly I've always rowed 8s as well as 4s, but it was, as I said, only in 1999 that Rowing Australia decided to recognise the popularity of women's rowing by replacing the Cox 4 with an 8, which is reflective of the huge popularity of women's rowing.
So actually, it's only been 21 years that the Queen's Cup. In fact, that's quite a nice double anniversary, isn't it? 21 and 100.
Yes, it is. But schoolgirl rowing in Australia has taken off in leaps and bounds since the early 1980s. So there's been no shortage of women who have enjoyed rowing and wanted to continue, including many who've gone on to represent at the highest levels. Yeah,
Australia is a very, very strong rowing nation. Do most people start at high school still?
Most people do now. I think I was in an era when the opportunity was still there to start later at university. I was 18, I think, and had never picked up an oar. And but so many schools now, Row, and the opportunities present themselves to a whole range of people. And I think it'd be quite difficult now, not impossible, but more difficult to do what I did, and then to still reach, Olympic level from a starting base of no experience after 6 years.
I certainly agree with that. It's I was at an event here in New Zealand where we were sharing the same space as the trialists for the national junior team, and they were walking in to get their lunch. And I just remember lifting my chin about 3 inches to look at them because they were all so tall. And I just thought, I'm really glad I'm not 18 now.
I like to think that if I was 18 now, I'd still be competitive, but yeah, there's a whole new breed of women out there.
Now, what is Rowing Australia doing to celebrate this wonderful 100-year anniversary?
On the 28th of March, a black tie dinner will be held at Penrith in conjunction with the National Championship Regatta for the Centenary Dinner to celebrate the achievements of women back in 1920 and ever since. And there have been some marvellous performances and achievements on and off the water in those 100 years. And of course, all the women who made it possible before 1920 are also included in that celebration, because without them, we wouldn't be here today either. So the dinner will take place at Penrith Panthers. It's a leagues club, but we're looking for a fantastic turnout with a couple of panels of interesting people to tell rowing stories and stories of the achievements of many women in sport, particularly rowing.
Now, on the screen and in the show notes is a web link if anyone would like to buy tickets to attend that event on the 28th of March. So that's pretty easy to do. Now, talk to me a little bit about the broader history of women in Australia and their relationship with sport.
Well, Australia is well known as being a sporting nation, and I think that across the board, women have been involved in sport in many ways for many years. And certainly at the Olympic Games, when the cameras are there for the men and the women get fantastic coverage. But unfortunately, I think many sports would agree, many people who've been involved in sports over many years would also agree that the coverage of women's sport has been less than ideal. And surveys have been done from time to time which have shown that the coverage of women's sport is less than that given to dogs and horses. And by that I mean
literally
greyhound racing and horse racing. And certainly in recent years, since 2017, certainly here in Victoria, we've had AFLW, which has put women's sport on the back pages and the front pages. AFLW is a women's version of Australian rules. It's played on a shortened format, but has garnered lots of attention about the women who play, the injuries they sustain, the amount of money they're paid or not paid, the amount of time they're required to train, all sorts of things that affect just about every woman who plays any sport. And they've hit the highlights, but it's not as though that women's sport was invented simply because AFLW came onto the scene. And I have to say too that our cricketers have been getting great coverage, as have the women who play soccer in the Matildas. And it's I'm really looking forward to the day when our rowers, who are world champions, we've got the world championship winning Cox was 4, and the silver medal winning 8, and hopefully they'll go on to doing great things in Tokyo, assuming Tokyo goes ahead, without being a doomsayer. And I'm really looking forward to the day when they get back page coverage too. And I'm sure that's the same for every other woman in every other, what I shall call and what I generally describe as more minor sports.
Yeah, I could heartily endorse that, and I'm very glad that since 2017 things are beginning to change.
Well, certainly the conversation's changing, and I think that that's part of it. Change conversation, change attitudes, change systems. And fingers crossed that back page coverage will be given to more than just AFLW and the cricketers. deserving as they are, and let me not take away from their achievements, their athleticism and their successes and what they have achieved, which is a bit like, I suppose, a different version of the women who made their case for the inclusion of water polo for women in the Sydney 2000 Olympics by staging protests in their swimming gear, standing on the doorsteps of IOC officers and saying it's our turn, it's our time. So, yeah, I think there's a lot more to come.
Fantastic. If women who are listening and our rowers are interested, there is a YouTube group which is called the Professional Women's Rowing Network. I think it's the Professional Business Women's Rowing Network. Have a look for it. And it's global. So it would be lovely if women who wanted to join that's an opportunity to, I suppose, meet the sisterhood in the LinkedIn environment.
Yes.
Now, there's also been a book published. What can you tell us about the history book?
Well, the book is not a deep dive into who won what, where and when. It's a great summary of the story of the last 100 years. And it tells stories about women who've rowed. It talks about the trials and tribulations, the barriers, and as well, of course, of the successes and of the people in the background who did help women overcome the numerous barriers to their participation, whether it be access to water, whether access to boats, and certainly coaches. And the establishment of the Women's Rowing Council back in 1920 was a seminal moment in women doing it for themselves. And it wasn't until the early 1980s that the Australian Women's Rowing Councils that had become was combined with the Australian Rowing Council to form one. So it's really only in recent years that there has been the recognition of the equality. I have to say that the book does reflect that rowing has been one of the sports that has treated women more equally perhaps than some, though not as equally in many circumstances as we all might have hoped for. And that includes women not being selected to compete in the 1976 Olympics, which was the first year that women were eligible to compete in the Games, not selecting a women's crew to go to Seoul in 1988, and I was a victim of that decision. And I feel really sorry for all the women who weren't able to go. So the book deals with these sorts of issues, as well as all the high points and the successes that so many women have achieved, and the most recent being Kim Brennan with her gold medal in Rio. So yeah, it's a great story with some fantastic pictures in it as well. And I think the highlight of the book will be for many the individual stories that are included in it as well. We conducted a survey and asked people to fill in their basic details about when they rowed, where they rowed, and also to provide in almost an unlimited box, no character limit box on the Survey Monkey, their rowing experiences, and all those thoughts, recollections, memories will be included in the book as well, and that will make fascinating reading. I haven't read them all myself, but the ones that I have tell a wonderful story and a great cross-section of the sport. So it's a book for everybody, and a great prezi for your rowing people. So it's been written by Judy Buckrich, and I was privileged to work with Judy when we put together the sesquicentenary book for the Melbourne Uni Boat Club, which was launched in 2009. So she knows about rowing, she knows about the people, and we didn't have to explain to her which end of the boat went first.
That's definitely a benefit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Margot, would you tell us the story of the Seoul Olympics, your personal story?
Oh, yes. So I had been fortunate to have gone to Los Angeles and had a fantastic time, came third, which made it all worthwhile. And I have to say, I'm not a great fan of the, I think of de Coubertin saying of it's not the winning but the taking part that counts, because I think crossing the line in third made all the difference after we were told we'd come fourth when we had originally crossed the line, which was most distressing. But we all trained hard between 1984 and 1988, and we'd been to the Commonwealth Games in 1986 and had been successful there in the 8. We won the 8, and we came second in the 4s, and we thought that there was good depth and good prospects for a crew to go to Seoul. So at the end of the regatta, which was held at Penrith on the old course, not the current Olympic course, we were all assembled to await the announcement, and were shocked to our marrow, I suppose, when no women were announced as having been in the squad. No explanation, no correspondence entered into, end of story. And I was extremely disappointed. I had really looked forward to the opportunity, certainly not guaranteed, but to represent Australia once again. But I felt terribly sorry for all the women who would never have the chance. It had been removed from them without explanation. And whilst a couple of crews decided that they'd carry on and try and challenge the decision in court, they were unsuccessful and ultimately did not compete either. So it was a real blow to the momentum that had been generated between 1980 and I guess 1986, 87, to then not have a crew selected. So all that knowledge, experience that younger women gained with rowing, from rowing with women who've been there, done that, was lost. And I think it was tragic. And then the situation was partially repeated in London in 2012, when the women were not given a fair go, shall we say, in relation to the processes for them being selected. And those things are also reflected in the book as well. But yes, I'm very thankful that I was able to go to the Olympics, come third, and have had a great time, and in being involved in the sport, which changed my life. And I always say that if I hadn't gone rowing, I'd just be another boring lawyer.
Thank you for that. And of course, Australia in those days used selectors to pick the crews. The coaches were not the people who chose. Is that right?
Pardon?
Were crews selected using selectors, external people, rather than the coaches from the National Championship Regatta?
Rowing's always had a panel of selectors who don't comprise the coaches. They're usually external. Well, they're rowing people who survey everybody's performances and then make recommendations to the Board of Rowing Australia that these crews be selected or not, as the case may be. So at the time, we never got an explanation.
And they do that live, or they did in those days, they did that live at the King's Cup Regatta.
Well, in those days, the King's Cup Regatta was the final selection regatta, or the National Championships part of it was the final selection regatta. So we all used to assemble and await the announcement, or the chop, or whatever you want to call it, and then we'd go off into selection camps for final determination, sitting on ergos, doing all those sorts of things, and so it was just, your career was either going to continue or it was all over. And for those girls who weren't selected, not including me in 1988, it meant they either had to shape up for another 4 years and have a crack at 92 or give it away. So, and another 4 years was a big call for quite a few.
It's interesting, isn't it, how quickly momentum can be killed and how long it takes to build back up again afterwards.
Yes. I think one of the things that I learned during my, 10 years of rowing pretty intensively, as you probably do too, that you learn so much when you row with people who know how to row hard and row well. And you can learn so much yourself, but there is so much to learn from those who know how to do it. And I lamented the loss of that experience between 98, 92, and then on to 96, where there was some success. But yes, it was not one of the finer moments in Australia's rowing history.
So basically, you're saying it took 2 Olympic cycles before the success that you had achieved in Los Angeles in '84 came back.
There were some good performances in '92, and then
but no medals.
I don't think so. No, and the pair.
I think Canada won all the sweep medals at '92. Canada did incredibly well. Oh yes.
Yes, and then the pair won in '96.
Yeah. And do you know that's one of my? That was Megan Still and Kate Slatter, wasn't it?
Yes. Yes.
I think that was one of. I like the pair. It's my personal favourite boat, and I think their technique, style, obviously amazing power, but also the ease with which they covered that course. And I remember just watching them just streak in front of the field because they won by open water, didn't they?
Yes, yeah. It was a very impressive win, and they rode hard. And they I went out on Lake Burley Griffin with Paul Thompson, their coach, in a tinny one day, and every stroke was just 100%. It was just amazing to watch, and that was quite a long time before the Olympics. But I'll always remember just watching the sheer power that they had, and it was fantastic that they had been in an environment where they were able to learn how to row hard and put it to the test at the Olympics and come away with the title of Olympic champion.
Yeah, truly impressive. Margot, thank you again for your time, your insight, your amazing storytelling about women's rowing in Australia.
Oh, there are plenty more stories to tell, Rebecca. So some good, some not so good. But I think certainly it's a great tribute to Rowing Australia that they're behind this dinner, they've initiated, they're supporting it, making it happen, and it'll be a real celebration of all that's fantastic about women's rowing. And it's, as I say, it's a sport that changed my life. And if I hadn't got involved in it, then we wouldn't be sitting here now. I wouldn't have done all the things I've done as a consequence. It's such a great sport, teamwork, the ultimate in teamwork. And as you say, rowing in a pair, if you get that singing along, almost nothing better. And I can empathise with you in that too. So it's been a pleasure. So thank you very much for having me.
And thank you to all of our listeners. Please tell your friends about RowingChat. If you want to listen, we're on all the favourite podcast apps, and leave us a review. The more reviews we get, hopefully, the better we get noticed and the more listeners we get. And then we can bring you even more great stories like this one today. I'm Rebecca Caro, and till next time, goodbye.